Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen first very quickly here. I'm Michelle Morris with Consolidated Planning Group. We are a financial planning firm that focuses mainly on families with special needs loved ones. We're a collaborative team. So whether you call and you get me, or you get Allison or her husband Jeff, or maybe you'll get my husband Andy, we're all there to help you. And we also have 2 or 3 office staff people who call and help us collect documents. So that's a little bit about us. We can help you with important planning for your future, like what you see on the screen: lifetime care, transition planning, protection plans, ABLE accounts. We can help advocate for you and your special needs loved ones. But today we have a special treat for you. We have Andy Hardwick. He is the big guy in town when it comes to special needs. His topics are always very, very well attended. He's very well known, and we are very lucky and appreciative to have you with us, Andy. And so with that, I will stop sharing my screen and you can go ahead and share yours and get going. And I see Amy has given me a link for closed captioning. So I'm going to try and work on that while Andy gets started, and we'll see if we
very much. Thank you.
Do it all.
Let me see if I can do something here. Okay, slideshow. Let's see if we can everybody see that? Yes, no.
Yes, we see.
All right, good. All right. Thank you very much, Michelle. My name is Andy Hardwick. I am Public Affairs Specialist for Social Security in Southeast Texas. And my job is to do education about Social Security programs and also SSI, supplemental security income. So let's start off by just explaining that SSI does not stand for Social Security income. It's supplemental security income. Okay, so we have 2 programs of disability for people with mental or physical disabilities, and they are SSI or SSDI. Okay, so how is Social Security different from SSI? Well, SSI, supplemental security income, you have to have limited income and resources. Okay, SSI is a fancy name for assistance from the federal government for people who are blind, disabled, or 65 or older. If you're 65 or older, you don't have to prove a disability. But if you're under 65, you have to prove a disability. Now, some of you may get discouraged because the first slide said for adults. Really, the rules are the same, or practically the same for adults and children. Now, when we say adults, we mean anybody 18 years old or older. Children, for us, means anyone under 18 years old. But really, these slides are applicable even if you have a child that's under 18. All these slides are really applicable. So there's only one difference there with children under 18, where if they're living in a household where their parents are also there, or their step-parents, income and resources, the parents or step-parents count as though they were the child's until the child turns 18. So that's the only difference. Once the child turns 18, what mom and dad have no longer counts. So that's the only difference. So that slide may not be in here because we put adults. So, but that's the only difference. All right. So now, generally, in most states, if you're eligible for SSI, you're also eligible for Medicaid, and Texas is one of those states. SSI comes from the general revenues. It does not come from Social Security. It has nothing to do with Social Security. But Congress thought we were doing such a bang-up job with Social Security that when the SSI program first started in 1974, they said, hey, you guys can have that. So we handle Social Security and SSI. Now, Medicaid what you get with SSI is not portable. In other words, if you move to another state with your relative or that has a disability, you have to notify Social Security and let us know that they are now residing in a new state after the move, not before, after the move, so we can send a referral to the Medicaid office of that state. So for the following month, they'll have the Medicaid for the new state. So for instance, if you have a person with SSI moves to Illinois today, okay, it's November 2nd, Texas Medicaid is still going to cover the costs of any medical services in Illinois for the month of November. But starting December, Texas Medicaid will no longer cover any expenses in Illinois if that's where the person now resides. So as soon as the person moves, or assuming, let's say they move November 1st or November 2nd, notify Social Security in Illinois or whatever state the person has moved to, and let us know so we can contact the Medicaid office in the new state, and the person on SSI can receive their Medicaid card from the new state prior to the following month, because the following month they'll have to use the Medicaid card from the new state. Now, as I said before, in order to get SSI, you have to be blind or disabled, assuming you're under 65. You have to have limited income and resources. And generally, you must be a U.S. citizen or resident. If you are not a U.S. citizen and you are applying for SSI, you must have worked in the United States at least 10 years, or if you're a minor child, your parents between them have to have worked 10 years in the United States in order for you to be eligible for SSI, if you're not a citizen. Now, once you become a citizen, that work requirement is no longer applicable. In order to receive SSI, you must reside in the 50 states, okay? If you move out of the states or even leave the United States for over 30 days, we suspend your SSI and your Medicaid until you're back in the United States for 30 days.
Andy, since we're talking about moving, we've had a question pop up.
Okay.
If the individual moves and does not qualify for Medicaid in the new state, does that affect their SSI eligibility?
No. Okay. What happens is, in most states, Medicaid eligibility comes automatically with SSI eligibility. If this happens to be one of the states where it's not, then they need to contact the Medicaid office in the new state to see what the eligibility requirements are. Okay. But generally it's automatic. You just have to, but if it's one of the few states where it's not, as soon as they move, they have to find out what are the qualifications for Medicaid in that new state. But I don't know. Personally, I don't know what else they could require other than the disability determination for SSI, because the person has low income and assets as it is. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on the SSI program. So I don't know what additionally they would require, but it might be possible where for some reason they have to meet some other requirement. They could still use the Texas Medicaid for the month of the move. However, for the following month, it would have to be the Medicaid from the new state. So they'd have to, as soon as they moved, inquire the Medicaid office, since it's not automatic, what do I have to do to get on Medicaid? But as I said, in most states, it is automatic. Okay. As soon as they know that the person is on SSI, that should be easy transition. But as I said, if it happens to be one of those places where that's not automatic, they just need to contact the Medicaid office and probably provide a proof that they're on SSI, and then see if there's any additional requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Now, there is one place where you can receive SSI if you don't reside in the 50 states, and that's the Northern Mariana Islands. In case you want to know, someplace near Guam, Samoa, that area in the South Pacific. Okay, they are U.S. citizens, so they can receive SSI there. But even Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands, where they're also U.S. citizens, If you move there, you cannot receive SSI while you're residing there. Okay. Again, if you're not a citizen, you have to have 10 years of work, or if you're a minor child, your parents between them have to have worked in the US 10 years in order for you to qualify for SSI. Unless you come in with refugee or asylee, that's a special status and they can get SSI without having worked in the US. So what is the definition of disability? For a person 18 years old or older, it's a physical or mental impairment that keeps a person from performing substantial work. What is substantial work? According to SSA, it means you have a gross monthly salary of less than $1,310, less than $1,310. So if the person who's applying for SSI is working at the time when they're applying, okay, then their gross earnings for the month would have to be less than $1,310. If they're over that, then their application would automatically be denied. And it also has to be a condition that has lasted or is expected to last 12 months or result in death. So if this person were in an accident and they were in traction and undergoing rehabilitation, the doctor says, well, I think the whole process is going to take about 11 months. Well, that application will be denied because the medical source is saying that this is a condition that is not going to last at least a year. Okay, so it has to be something that has lasted or is expected to last 12 months or more or result in death. Now, for a child impairment, meaning for a child under 18, they have to have marked or severe functional limitations. And this has to be a condition that's expected to last at least 12 months or result in death. So for a child, we're going to compare this child to other children in the community of similar age. Can they feed themselves, dress themselves? In other words, at age 7, maybe they would be expected to read and to be able to use the toilet, to be able to feed themselves. At least if you put a sandwich on their plate, they'll be able to feed themselves. So they have to be able to do certain things that children of that age are expected to do. If they have difficulty, then they could be classified then as a person with disabilities, as a young person with disabilities. For the blind, for blindness, if you're saying that you are claiming disability on the basis of a visual impairment, it has to be 2200 or less in the better eye, or the field of vision is less than 20 degrees. Now, how do we make the disability decision? An agency of the state called DDS, Disability Determination Services, DDS, makes the medical determinations for Social Security. Every state of the union has a DDS, okay? Now, the manual that they use, and this is used nationwide, is called Disability Evaluation under Social Security. The nickname is the Blue Book. If you type in Disability Evaluation under Social Security or type in Blue Book, the Blue Book, you will see online. We don't have hard copies available. It's just online. So you can look, you can see online what the criteria is for determining disability. The book is divided, or the manual is divided into two sections. Section A is for adults. Section B is for individuals under 18 years of age. Okay, and it's by the particular condition, like if it's pulmonary or something like that, that would be in that, you would look under that classification, and then you would see specifically what that condition was, and there'd be like bullet points, and you would see what DDS is looking for in order to establish disability. Now, it usually takes 3 to 4 months to get a medical decision. DDS will contact the doctors, hospitals, clinics, school districts to get all those ARDs and other reports, okay, to establish disability. If they don't get enough information from your medical sources because they have not answered for some reason, they moved away, whatever, then DDS will set up the person for a consultative exam at no cost to them. And even if transportation is necessary, they will pay for that also. Okay. So now, how can you be an advocate for a person with a disability? Well, you can do what attorneys do. A few weeks after the claim is filed, you can contact DDS. You can get their number through Social Security. You can contact DDS and find out, did you get that information from my medical sources or my child's medical sources? Okay, what are you lacking? And then, you know, call the medical source up and say, hey, I just talked with DDS. They said they haven't gotten your medical report yet. When are you going to send it in? Because this is what an attorney would be doing too. So you can do those same things. Stay in contact with DDS and see if they need anything else or if those reports have come in or not. Now with the SSI program, there's something called presumptive disability. Presumptive disability, they are basically 15 different conditions that a person has that remember in the previous slide, I told you it'll take 3 to 4 months for DDS to make a medical decision because they have such a large quantity of disability claims. And also they have to wait for the medical sources to send those reports in. So sometimes that takes a few weeks. All right. So while a person is waiting for a medical decision, if they have one of the 15 conditions listed under presumptive disability, because there's a likelihood that the case would be approved, they can receive conditional SSI payments and Medicaid coverage while they're waiting for a decision on their claim. Okay. Now, there's not a list in this presentation of the different conditions, but some of them are cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, low birth weight, HIV, amputation above the knee.
You happen to see sickle cell disease on there?
No.
Okay. Would you think that that would qualify someone for SSI if they have frequent unexpected hospitalizations with sickle cell?
Okay, yes, could be. I'll tell you what, they need to look at the book, Disability Evaluation under Social Security or Blue Book, type in sickle cell, it'll take them to the section and see what the criteria is for sickle cell. Now we have another category of allowances under SSI. Now with the presumptive disability, even if the case, on the small chance that the case is denied for medical reasons, the person would not have to pay back anything that Medicaid covered or any of the SSI monies that were paid out while the case was being decided. Okay, so that's one, but it's still probably going to take 3 to 4 months, maybe even more than that. But the person can receive the SSI and the Medicaid while the case is being decided. There's another category of cases called compassionate allowance. Those are more than 200 disabling conditions, many of them genetic or cancer related, where if a person has one of these conditions, as soon as DDS gets the medical confirmation that a person has this, they could approve the case. So instead of, it's like called fast tracking. So instead of taking 3 or 4 months for a decision, they could possibly approve the decision or the case in 30 days or less. Okay. So of course, I don't have in my head the 200 compassionate allowance condition. But again, if you go to ssa.gov or socialsecurity.gov, and in the search box up above, you type in compassionate allowance, you'll see the over 200 conditions that qualify. Now, if that person has that condition, again, what that means, we can't give them Medicaid, but as soon as we get verification of that condition, then that would mean that, you know, we'll fast track that case and that possibly they could get paid in about 4 weeks or less. Well, probably about 4 weeks, I would say. All right, so just because they don't qualify for presumptive disability or compassionate allowance doesn't mean you shouldn't file the claim, okay? It just means that it's probably going to take 3 to 4 months for a decision. Okay, so for the SSI program, since it is an assistance program from the federal government, you do have to have a limited income, and the amount of limited income is $794 per month. All right, so now that's going to go up next year. Let me see, it's going to go up to $841 for 2022, but right now it's $794 a month. So if the SSI applicant has more than that money, more than that amount, they're going to be automatically determined not to be eligible. Remember, a child under 18, for instance, could have Down syndrome, which qualifies as a presumptive disability. However, because a child is under 18, maybe it's a 2-parent family and both parents are working. So maybe at this time, the parent's income is too high for the child to receive benefits. But once the child turns 18, even though he or she is living with mom and dad and still dependent on them, now we treat that child like an adult. So then they could apply, and mom and dad's income or resources would not count anymore, only the child's. So if that's a problem, just think about applying. The soonest you could reapply would be the month the child turns 18.
Okay. Hey, Andy, what is the limit for the parent's income?
You know, I don't have, I will tell you this, after this, after this is over, I can send you, or you can go yourself, go to ssa.gov, and in the search box, put in Understanding SSI, Understanding SSI. And it's a book, it's about 100 pages, all the rules and regulations, and it has there the chart with the parents. See, it depends. Is the parent working, or is their income from a non-work source, like a pension or child support or something like that? Are there one parent? Is there one parent or 2 parents in the house? How many other children under 18 are there in the house? And are all the children under 18 not disabled or disabled? So there's a whole bunch of rules. I can't give you a fixed amount and say, well, if they're under, because it depends. But if you type in Understanding SSI in the search box, when you go to ssa.gov or socialsecurity.gov, G-O-V, and you type in Understanding SSI, you'll see that book, and I can't remember what page it's on, but it will tell you for a child under 18, if there's 1 parent or 2 parents, if the income is, when it says earned income, it refers to income from wages, any kind of income that's either from self-employment or from working as an employee for a company. And then unearned income would be like dividends, interest, child support, any kind of pensions or anything like that. That would be unearned income.
Okay. Is that before or after tax?
Before. Hate to be play the Grinch, but it's before taxes. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to remind everybody that I've seen a couple people raise their hand. If you have questions, please put it in the chat box. We do have a lot of questions, and we're going to get to as many of them as possible. But also people are posting helpful answers to some of these questions in the chat box and links for where to go. So I'm monitoring that. We're helping each other out over here and learning so much from you, Andy.
My pleasure. And after this is over, if it's not on the last slide, you can just send me an email to andy.hardwick@ssa.gov. I'll be glad to answer your questions, because I know a lot of times it doesn't, since we have a lot of participants in excess of 100, it's difficult to get to all the questions. But if we can't, that's okay. Send me an email at any time. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me, and we will try to answer your questions. Andy.Hardwick, HARDWICK, at ssa.gov, andy.hardwick@ssa.gov.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So here's the types of income, which I already talked about. Unearned is pension, alimony, support payments, and earned means wages, self-employment, royalties, sheltered workshop payments, etc. Okay, also, besides having limited income, the person has to have limited resources, what you would say assets. So it's $2,000 for an individual. So if the person applying for SSI has several bank accounts, the total amount of income in those bank accounts cannot exceed $2,000. So if it's a minor child living with two parents, between the parents and the child, the resources cannot exceed $5,000. If it's a child, we're talking about a child under 18. If it's a child under 18 with just one parent, excuse me, the combined resources or assets cannot exceed $4,000. But remember, once the child turns 18, we don't care what mom and dad have, that their assets or resources are no longer countable. Okay, it's just for the child. But once they're, as long as they're under 18, it's a different story. Or if they're, for instance, being raised in a non-parent household, if this is a child being raised by a grandparent, an aunt, or uncle, or whatever, and there's no parents or step parents in the house, we are not counting the income and resources of whoever the caregiver is. Okay, even though the child may be under 18, it's a different rule because there's not parents or step parents in the household. All right, so these are the things we don't count. The home where the person lives, the car. If there's one car, we're not counting the value of the car, even though it might be a Tesla or a Mercedes, whatever. We're not counting the value of that. Now, if there are two cars, the more expensive car is not counted. The less expensive is counted toward that resource limit. If the child is under 18, if the child is 18 or over, we don't care how many cars the parents have. Okay, we would just count any cars that might be in the child's or in the young adult's name. Okay, burial plots are not counted. If there is a bank account for burial, it must be marked for burial. We will not count up to the first $1,500, which frankly, I don't know what $1,500 would buy in a burial fund, probably the hole in the ground, literally. Okay, life insurance, again, silly rule, but you have to understand that SSI has been around 40 years, or a little bit over 40 years. So this may have made sense 40 years ago. If you have a life insurance with a face value of $1,500 or less, that's not countable. Again, I don't know what $1,500 would buy you these days. Now, if you have a term insurance, that could be of unlimited. You could have a term insurance for $500,000 because that has no cash surrender value, right? But if it's whole life, then the cash surrender value counts toward that $2,000 limit that the person has. Now, ABLE accounts, a person could have up to $100,000 in an ABLE account. Special needs trust, you could have an unlimited amount of money. Let's say the person with disabilities won a lawsuit or something, or the disability was a result of an accident. So the person got a large settlement. If it's in a special needs trust, then that would not be countable. However, it has to be marked so, and the monies in a special needs trust can only be used for certain things. Okay, now let's talk about the ABLE account. You can have up to $100,000, and the money there can be used for housing, education, healthcare, transportation, assistive technology, personal support services, job training. So you have a lot more latitude with the ABLE account than with special needs trust. Now, the total amount of contributions to an ABLE account cannot exceed $15,000 per year. So if you have relatives that want to put into that ABLE account, that's okay, as long as the total amount of contributions from any source or from all sources don't add up to more than $15,000 per year.
Andy,
Okay,
if
now,
they have adoption assistance, if they're over 18, should that go into a trust, or does that count against them?
you know what? have them email me after and give me the specifics. I'll have to look it up to see what kind it is and whatever, and we'll see what can be done with that. Okay. It might not even be countable if it's from the state. I don't know, but I'll have to check in with, but have them email me and with the specifics, and I will check. All right, living arrangements. Okay, once the child turns 18, because we're now treating them like an adult, and this is another dumb rule in SSI, but it's existed since the beginning of time, almost since the beginning of the program. In SSI, you're either classified as, once you're 18 or older, in your own household or in the household of another person. Okay, you're in your own household if you live by yourself, or you have rental liability, or you own the home. Okay, the home is in your name, or you purchase and prepare your food separately, or you are in a business-like arrangement with other people. You live with other people, but you're there as a boarder. Okay, or you're with other people, but you pay your share of the expenses. So let's say the person lives in a 4-person household. They've now turned 18, right? Since we're no longer counting on income sources, how much SSI we pay this person? We have to determine, are they in their own household or in the household of another? So to be in their own household, since they're living with other people, they're not living alone, and the house is not in their name, we have to see if perhaps they are sharing. This is a 4-person household. So we ask, how much is the food for 4 people? How much are the utilities for 4 people? And how much is the mortgage or the rent for the whole household? So we add those up. And if this is a 4-person household, we divide by 4. So let's assume that between the rent or mortgage, the utilities, and the food for a 4-person household, it's $2,400 per month. Okay, so 2,400 divided by 4 is 600. So in order for the person on SSI or applying for SSI to be considered as living in their own household and sharing with other people, they would have to be paying at least $600 toward the household expenses every month. So that means that once they get their SSI, like when they first start out, they could be classified as living in another person's household because they don't have any income to pay toward the household expenses. But once they start getting the SSI, if that person, or if they have to pay, if they're paid through another person, that person contacts us and says, hey, they started getting their SSI. Now they're paying, these are the household expenses. This is what this person gives us. And if it's a 4-person household and what they contribute represents at least 1/4 of the household expenses, or more, could be more, but it has to be at least. If it's a 2-person household, at least a half. 10-person household, at least a 10th. So if they're paying their share of the expenses, then we can move them up to living in their own household, and then they would be eligible for the $794 a month rather than the $520-something when they were classified as living in another person's household.
Andy, this is an interesting question for you. If they are contributing, like you mentioned, like $600, is that considered income to the parents? And do the parents?
No. Okay. If they're in a sharing arrangement and they're paying their share, that is not income. But there's another way. Let's say they're in a 4-person household, but the expenses are now, because maybe the parents move, whatever. Now the expenses are $4,000 a month. 4,000 divided by 4 is 1,000. The person on SSI, even with $794, cannot pay their share because their share would be $1,000 a month. They're short. They're always going to be $200-something short. So what happens? Well, if the parent says, now I'm doing a business-like arrangement and I'm treating my child as a boarder, the $600 a month they were giving me, they'll still be giving me $600, but now that's going to be for their room and board. Okay, so they are, by saying they have a business-like arrangement, they're saying that that this person is now in a separate household, even though they sleep in the same house, they eat the same food, they watch TV with everybody else, but it's just a technical thing. They're saying, well, now they're a boarder. They're doing that because they're giving me the $600 a month, and that's what anybody else would give me. That's not their share. That's because their share would be 1,000, but they're now paying it as a boarder. So this is a fair fee that I would charge anybody else. I'm charging my child $600 a month. Okay, so now we can make that child or that young person as living in their own household in a commercial-like arrangement. But in this case, since we're saying it's a separate household under IRS rules, they say that $600 that you're giving, that they're giving you per month, which would be a little bit in excess of $6,000, that the parents are supposed to declare that as income to them, because that's rental income. They're saying that person is a boarder. Now, if a person is sharing, if their share is $600 a month, they can pay it in sharing. You don't declare that as income to you on your income tax. But if you're saying they're a boarder, then you're saying they're living in a separate household. Then according to IRS rules, if they're living in a separate household, you have them there as a renter. That's rental income to you, and you have to declare that 6,000 plus on your income tax as income to you. So I don't make the rules.
One more,
okay, go ahead.
One or two more about this topic before we go on to
Sure.
Medicaid, if you're okay with that.
Fine.
Okay, what if the disabled adult child lives with their divorced parents, but it goes back and forth between two separate houses? I mean, they pay $600.
Okay, are they? Oh, yeah, well, every time, well, we have to determine, it's the first of the month rule. So if they move to live with mom in November, we don't care, even if it's November 1st, if they were with the dad part of November 1st, they're still considered dad's household November 1st. But now when they move with mom, they have to call in, or whoever's getting a check for them, and to see what are the household expenses in mom's house. So to see if they can pay their share in mom's house. So starting December, if they're in their mom's home December 1st, they're going to get whatever rate, either going to get the higher or the lower rate. If they're now, if at the end of December, they move back with dad, then we have to go over the expenses in dad's household, so that as of January, if January 1st, they're already in dad's house, then now we're going to see if in dad's house, are they paying their share or not? So that's the way. So if they spend a few months every time they move, they're going to have to let us know.
So if it's a week by week, do they just, yeah.
Wow.
They just go by, where they are on the first.
Yeah, we're going to have to determine that. That's interesting. So I don't know, but how is that? I mean, as far as school remember, if they're 18 years, well, if they're 18 years old, we're still going to have to determine, yeah, we're talking about somebody over 18 probably.
Right.
Yeah, their household. That's going to be interesting. Again, it's going to be where they are on the first of the month. So week by week, where were they as of the first of the month? The first moment so at 12:01 a.m. on November 1st, where were they? In mom or dad's household? And that's what's going to determine whether or not, so if and then at the end of the month, I guess they'll have to call it again and see, as of December 1st, the first at 12:01 a.m., where are they, in mom or dad's household? And depending on where, that's, they'll either be in their own.
Would it make it easier, or would it be cheating if they just always made sure that their child was at the same household on 12:01 at the first of every month?
No, I mean, technically that's what the rules say. So
yeah,
that's the way.
And
that's what the rules say.
How do they show that the child has paid their fair share?
Well, the householder,
the lesser amount,
in whosever name the house is or the apartment is, they're the ones that are answering the questions, and they say, so and so gives me X amount toward these expenses.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So redetermination, we do a non-medical review of the SSI case every 1, 2, or 3 years. And they used to be done in person, but remember, I forgot to say this at the beginning of the presentation, sorry. All Social Security offices are closed for most business nationwide. Don't even think about going to the Social Security office to file an application or do a case review. These are done by phone. Well, all the reviews are done by phone. Okay, the initial application though can be done by phone or can be done online. The medical part can always be done online. The non-medical part, there's some restrictions, so you might have to call in. But don't think if you filled out the medical part of the SSI online that you're done. That's only half the application. You've got to do the non-medical part. If you try to do the non-medical part online and you're not supposed to, you'll get a pop-up saying contact your local office because you have to complete this, but you're going to complete it by phone, not in person. Okay. And as long as COVID's out there, the situation, I honestly don't know when offices are going to open up again, but we're in November. I think I can safely say we are not going to open up before the end of the year. And when next year, I don't know. If we get this thing under control, I'm assuming that we'll open up sometime early next year, I hope. Okay. There's also a medical review depending. Now, if the child came on SSI before they turned 18, once they turn 18, we're going to do a medical review. We're going to now, when I say we, I mean DDS, is going to look at them as an adult to see if they still meet the standards once they turn 18. So you'll get some forms from DDS to fill out. DDS will contact the medical sources and see if they still meet the criteria as an adult now, because they've now reached 18 years old. After that, every 3, 5, or 7 years, depending on whatever their medical, whatever their disability is, their case is going to be reviewed medically. Okay, now we have something under the SSI program called work incentives. Parents get very upset because the school district sometimes in the transition programs push the child to get out there and work, which is a good thing, but parents get upset and say, well, wait a minute, you know, my child just got on SSI, now they're going to lose their Medicaid and everything. And no, not necessarily. We have some programs here: impairment related work expense, blind work expense, plan for achieving self-support, continued Medicaid eligibility, student earned income exclusion, where your child can work and their SSI either won't be affected initially or might be reduced, but they'll still stay on the Medicaid. And if for some reason they have to stop working, their SSI goes back up again. So don't deprive your child of an opportunity to work if it presents itself, because the goal of the work incentive program is to get your child to get in there and be paid and be covered with health insurance through their employer like everybody else. That may not be possible because of the degree of disability. Okay, but even if it's not, maybe they can work part-time and add on to their SSI. So that'll give them additional monies during the month and more freedom. Maybe also they'll be able to form friendships there, have a little bit more independence and things like that. So, all right. So I'm just going to go over a few of these programs. Impairment related work expense. If the young person that goes to work has to spend extra money in order to work, maybe special transportation to get to their place of work because there's no other way to get there. Well, if they're earning $1,000 a month, but in order to pay for special transportation to get there, it's $500 a month. Well, we're only going to count 500. Not the full 1,000, because the 500 is an impairment related work expense. So it could be special transportation, residential modifications, any other expense that the person has in order to help them go to work. Now, these expenses have to be approved by SSA, but that means we would be counting that much less of the person's income from work. Plan for achieving self-support. Suppose a person were getting $1,000 a month in Social Security under their parent. Now, if they try to apply for SSI, they're going to be ineligible because 1,000 is above the 794, the SSI. But suppose the $1,000 a month, they want to go to school, to college, and they want to use that $1,000 a month for tuition and fees. So they go to U of H, they inquire what it would cost. U of H tells them it'll be $1,000 a month roughly for tuition, fees, and books. That's what it's going to be per month. and they come back to us, they run up a program, they say, I want to be a teacher, and I'm going to use $1,000 a month that I get from Social Security to pay for my schooling. And they provide the proof from the school that this is what the expenses are going to be. Well, guess what? Now they can write up this plan for achieving self-support. And if we approve it, that $1,000 a month they get from Social Security, or even they get from a job that they're working at, we're not going to count that. We're going to count the money that they use from their job or from their Social Security or other pension that they get, whatever they use for schooling. If that's approved by us, that portion of their wages or their Social Security or whatever pension they get, that's not going to be counted because they're using that to pay for their schooling. So that's another thing that we have. If the child is under 22, in school full-time and working, we actually don't count the first $1,930 a month. The first $1,930 a month, we don't count of any income they make from work, up to a maximum of $7,770 a year. Okay, when they reach that amount, then we just apply the regular rules toward earned income. But up to that, they can actually be working. If they're in school full time, they're under 22 and they're working, we can look at how much money of theirs we don't count. So these are just some of the we have a lot more too. All right, so what the SSI responsibilities are, please let us know if there's change in household income, in the composition of the household, if they leave the United States, okay? Go to socialsecurity.gov or ssa.gov to complete the medical portion of the SSI. Okay, you don't have to submit the documents, the medical evidence, just the names, addresses, phone numbers of doctors, school districts, clinics, hospitals. Okay, the non-medical portion may require contact with SSA by phone. Now, Social Security, if the child has a work history, if the child works, they're under 24 and they work for 2 years, they might be eligible for Social Security, SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. Or if the child has a parent that passes away and had a work history, or one of the parents starts getting Social Security disability or retirement, that child could become eligible under their parent. They could become eligible if their disability began before age 22. Now, if the child is under 18, we don't even determine whether or not they have a disability. Just by virtue of being a minor, if the parent has a work history and they passed away, or the parent is getting Social Security disability or retirement, that child can be eligible just by virtue of being a minor. But at 18 or 19, if they're in high school, we're ready to cut them off unless the parent or caregiver tells us this person has a disability. If that is approved by us, by DDS, then the person comes on as a disabled adult child and they continue receiving benefits. Or what if they're 29 when their parent passes away or starts getting Social Security? As long as that 29-year-old is unmarried, has difficulty working, and can show us that that disability began before age 22, we'll get that person Social Security under their parent. Okay. So if the child, so we don't make a determination if the child is disabled under SSDI until they're 18, at least 18. If that is the case, after 2 years, they become eligible for Medicare, that red, white, and blue card that seniors get. Anybody who's on Social Security disability, 2 years, comes on Medicare. Unlike Medicaid, Medicare has co-pays, deductibles, things like that. Now, can a person get SSI and Social Security at the same time? Yes. If the Social Security is a lower amount, yes. Or if they're under that past program, yes. So they can. Okay. Suppose a child is on or a young person is on SSI, and now they're at least 18, and Now one of their parents dies or starts getting Social Security. So now they start getting Social Security under their parent, SSDI. All right. Now they're cut off of SSI and the Medicaid. Uh-oh, what happens now? They got to wait 2 years before they come on Medicare. So what do they do in the meantime? If the only reason they were cut off of SSI and Medicaid was because they became eligible for Social Security for SSDI under their parent, then they can stay on Medicaid as long as they keep the SSI rules, right? So as long as their resources are under $1,000, or if they have an ABLE account, it's under $100,000. As long as they make believe they're still on SSI, they can stay on Medicaid. And then after 2 years, they'll get Medicare. And then if they want to stay on Medicaid, Medicaid will pay the premiums for Medicare. So they'll have Medicare and Medicaid. They'll have both, or if they want, they can just drop the Medicaid. If they drop the Medicaid, then they don't have to worry about the SSI rules. But if they keep it, then Medicaid is going to pay the premiums for the Medicare. And then they'll have the best of both worlds because a lot more doctors accept Medicare than Medicaid. Okay. So if the child works and they make at least $1,470, they can get 1 credit of work. And after 2 years, if they have at least 6 credits, they could get their own SSDI. All right. And I'm not going to go into this Medicare. Here's our website, socialsecurity.gov or SSA.gov. Or again, remember, you can just go Andy, ANDY.Hardwick, HARD as in David, W as in Walter, ICK, Andy.Hardwick at SSA.gov. And I'll be glad to answer your questions. I apologize. I know we don't have that much time. I know I answered some questions. So Michelle, if you want to give me some more questions, have at it.
Yeah, I usually like to take the last few minutes of the webinar to talk about what Consolidated Planning Group can do for all of you. But I feel like with this one, it's just way more important to get these questions answered. So you'll get an email with a copy of this webinar and the ways to contact both Andy and I. And I would love to hear from all of you from that email, but let's get to some more of these questions. Basically, goodness, there's a lot of them still, Andy. Can you quickly just the differences between SSI and SSDI while I grab the next?
SSI comes on the 1st of the month. The maximum amount of SSI is $794. SSI is assistance from the government, and the SSI provides you with Medicaid. Social Security is an entitlement program. In order for a person to get Social Security, they have to have a work history, or they have to get it under a parent who is either passed away with a work history or a parent who is getting Social Security. Now, the Social Security called SSDI in this case, disability, it provides Medicare after 2 years. SSI comes on the 1st of the month. The highest amount is $794. SSDI comes on a Wednesday, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th Wednesday of the month. If you were born from the 1st to the 10th, it's the 2nd Wednesday, 11th to 20th, the 3rd Wednesday, 21st to 31st, the 4th Wednesday of the month. And the SSDI can be any amount, depending on what you made, if it's for your work, or what your parent made, if you're getting it under a parent. So again, the SSDI comes on a Wednesday, SSI comes on the 1st of the month. SSI gives you Medicaid, SSDI gives you Medicare. SSI has a lot of questions, a lot of rules about income and resources. SSDI does not. You could have $1 million in the bank, okay? We don't care about that. So SSDI is an entitlement program. Now with Medicare, unlike Medicaid, it is portable. You can take it from state to state. Okay, so you don't have to, if you're just on SSDI, you don't have to call into Social Security. You should to update your address, and phone number, but you don't have to, we don't have to ask how many people are in a household, how many, because that doesn't determine how much you get. How much you get under SSDI is how much you were making when you were working, or the person under whom you're getting the benefits was making when they were working. That's what determines the amount on the SSDI.
Thank you so much. That has answered several of these questions. An 18-year-old son is on Medicaid waiver until they're 21. So at 21, do they qualify for Medicaid, traditional Medicaid?
Well, the only way they qualify through us is being on SSI. So even though they're on Medicare waiver, you can apply for them at 18 under SSI. If they get approved, the Medicaid will still come through the state of Texas. They'll just take them off the waiver program and put them on the SSI program, but it's still going to be it's still going to be Medicaid from the state of Texas. So nothing is going to change, just the category. It won't be Medicare waiver. It'll be Medicaid waiver. It'll be Medicaid because they're on SSI. And as long as they're on SSI, they can be on Medicaid and as long as they're living in Texas forever and ever. Okay. So it won't stop at 21.
I see a lot of questions about specific diagnoses, which can all be answered in the Blue Book.
In the Blue Book, yeah. I'm not an expert. You look in the Blue Book, the closer you are to the definition of the things in the Blue Book, the more likely the case will be approved. But DDS has the final say. Okay. Now, so again, DDS will be looking at, remember, if the child is under 18, they'll be looking at children of similar age that don't have a disability and compare this child with other children to see what limitations there are. Once they reach 18, they'll be looking at, well, can the person, in spite of their limitations, mental or physical, do other kind of work or do kind of productive work? If they still have difficulty, then chances are the case will probably be approved. But the Blue Book is the best place to look. But remember, about a month or 3 weeks after applying, contact DDS and say, is there anything that I can do to help you? Do you need anything else? Did you get all the reports back? Do you want me to contact my doctors or whatever? So you work with DDS that way.
What are some of the best states if someone was going to move out of Texas because they're not great with all this special needs stuff and they were going to go to another state?
California probably has the best programs, and they also add on, but the cost of living, they add on a state supplement. The states are allowed to add on a supplement to that $794. Most states don't. I know California does, but then the cost of living in California is extraordinary. So I don't know. I mean, you would have to look. You'd have these days with the internet, it's easy. You could probably check on the internet and see what the states under the SSI, what they have to offer, or what social programs they have through their Medicaid office. What social programs do they offer as far as people with disabilities? I mean, it varies from state to state. So I can't really tell you that this person, not this person, I'm sorry, this state is better than other than knowing that I know California has a lot of programs, but you might try some of the northern states like New Jersey or New York, but then again, or Virginia or Maryland, something like that. But again, the cost of living is probably going to be a lot higher. So it's so you kind of have to measure the pros and the cons of each thing.
Okay, awesome. We are fully out of time. I've gotten to as many questions as I could. If you have further questions, I've put Andy's email address in the chat box, and you will get an email with his contact information. There's also my contact information. We do offer a free financial planning consultation. We do special needs planning and Social Security analysis. So you can reach out to me. All of that will be in an email coming in a little bit. Thank you so much, Andy, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Who attended. We appreciate it.
God bless you all. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Bye. You're welcome.